Welcome back to the Sports Source, the segment of our program brought to you by Parkside Cabin Rentals. Summer is here. If you're looking for a getaway with some solitude, Parkside Cabin Rentals, the way to go. A do-it-yourself trip to Sevier County, all shapes and sizes of cabins. And if you do want to hit Gatlinburg, hey, free parking. Parkside Cabin Rentals, you get all that. Check them out online. You can look at any of their layouts and pick the cabin you like. ParksideCabinRentals.com. All right, I want to welcome in the third member of today's panel we have right here from The Athletic, David Ubben. David, thanks for being back with us.
Appreciate it.
All right. As I mentioned, going to break, what we're doing, I went back over the last 8, and we do this every offseason to try and gauge where Tennessee is in terms of trying to win a championship. Went back since expansion to look at the 8 SEC East Division champions. What do they have in common? What kind of rush offense do they have? What kind of pass defense do they have? What was Tennessee last year, and does Tennessee have the capacity to make up the distance or to keep that whatever lead they may have? So this is how this works. And we're looking only, as we do this, at these teams versus SEC competition. So I'm not letting it be skewed by the non-Power 5 teams. It's SEC only. Let's talk about rush offense, okay? The last 8 SEC East champions have averaged 181 yards per game rushing against SEC foes. Now, I always get some math person who will say, you should be doing the median. It's more accurate. It doesn't. So out there, the median is 172. All right, it's probably the only place in this whole show where the median is that far off from the average. But you got a range there. 172 to 181 yards is what the typical East Division champion winner rushes for in a game against SEC foes. Last year, Tennessee way down at 135. So my question, against the foes they've got this fall, does Tennessee have the capacity to pick up 35 or 45 more rush yards per game? Is the rush offense ready to take off at that level? David?
I think you have the pieces to do it. You upgrade obviously with Cade Mays. You'd ideally like to think that
he'll be cleared.
He'll be cleared, of course. And then Wanya Morris and Darnell Wright, Caroline Calvert, those guys continue to progress. Trey Smith, you'd assume he can stay healthy. Brandon Kennedy, your 6th-year guy. You have the piece on the offensive line. You have Eric Gray there as well. But I think too, beyond the total yards as well. I think can you get your average up? Your average per yard per carry, and can you eliminate the negative plays? And if you can do those two things, which they really did a good job of last year, especially eliminating the negative plays. If you can do those two things, it's a lot easier to make up those 40-some yards. And it's definitely possible. I wouldn't rule it out.
That's a big jump. But I think also they were leery of playing Eric Gray a lot last year. You saw him take over late in the year, and he looked electric. With his game-breaking speed, that's a guy that can help your average with a few big runs. Josh, your thoughts on whether or not this team is capable of getting an extra 35 yards on the ground against SEC competition?
Yeah, I would say it's capable, and I would not rule it out. I wouldn't call it likely. My number one starting point, if I'm going to say it's going to happen for Tennessee, would be Eric Gray because of those explosive plays. Every game's not going to be Vanderbilt where you're getting 90-yard runs a time or two a game. But more explosive plays are just going to naturally help get those numbers up, help the average. And then the offensive line does have the pieces, just a lot of ifs. If Darnell and K-Ron and Wanya Morris take jumps. If Cade Mays is, I think he's going to be eligible. The chemistry of the offensive line, though, that's still a question with him not having that much time. So the potential is absolutely there to be better to make that kind of jump, 30 to 40 yards per game. It's a pretty big leap.
That's a large leap. One thing that does also work in Tennessee's favor on paper, Mississippi State was no great shakes last year, but you would figure they'd still be better than what you're going to get out of Arkansas this year, especially because they didn't have their spring practice with a brand new coach in Sam Pittman. So you've got first-year coach, which usually means a step backward. He's not going to have the full off season that a first-year coach would normally have. You would think that Arkansas would be an easier foe than Mississippi State was last year. We'll keep that in mind as we go through this. Let's take a look at pass offense. SEC East champions the last few years, what you'll find is the rush game has meant more than the pass game in terms of where they rank in the league, not by yardage, but in terms of where they rank in the league. You got a better gist of who's going to win the conference by where they rank rushing than you do passing. Average pass per game, 213, median 215, so about 214 yards is where you want to get to. Tennessee averaged 225, 226 last year. Okay, well, you're certainly capable. Only one thing, you basically rebuilt your entire receiving core. So, do you anticipate Jarrett Garantano, year 2 in the system for the first time in his career, with a brand new receiving core for the most part? Are they capable of staying where they are, or do you expect to step backwards?
You do have to chop off some yards after the catch, too, right, to help Tennessee get to that 225 number, with Juwan being gone, of course. I think they still can get there if they take advantage of the pieces that they have, because they have some talent from Palmer to Josh Palmer coming back from Mel Keaton, and also the running backs. Eric Gray can factor into this conversation as well. Him and Ty Chandler, those can be passing options. So can Tennessee take a step back and still be where it needs to be? Yeah, I think it can.
Yeah, I think it's possible. I think, too, again, I think you have to have somebody step up into that number 2 receiver role. But it's also a tough, when you look at the Mizzou game, too, last year, that's a little bit of an outlier, 400-some yards. They're not getting that. They had a lot of games last year where they were, not even really close to 200 yards for whatever reason. Granted, not throwing a lot, playing from ahead. That's a thing as well. When you get hot late in the season, they won a lot of SEC games. But, yeah, I think ultimately it comes down to that's the million-dollar question for this entire passing offense is, can Garantano continue to be the guy that you saw more in 2018 than 2019? And can you find a second receiver, and can Palmer be your number 1 guy and live up to that?
I get you would like to think that Garantano, 5th year overall, 2nd year in the same system, 2nd year with Chaney, that the pass offense would take a step forward. I think it takes a little step backwards because of all the change. But I think the rush offense gets a little better. I don't know that they'll hit the number they need to hit on rushing, but I do think the rushing offense is where you're going to see the move this year.
You don't want as much variance in those passing numbers game to game.
Yes. All right. Very good. When we come back, let's talk about defense. How close is the Tennessee defense to being East title worthy? We'll discuss. Come on back on the Sports Source.